morning and welcome to the LNG Marketplace Weekly News Flash. Here's the latest we have selected for you from all over the media. Here come the top news from last week. French oil major Total has completed the acquisition of Anadarko's stake in Mozambique's LNG project in a deal expected to raise much-needed revenue for Mozambique. The project is expected to come into production by 2024. Just to remind you, Anadarko has agreed to be taken over by Occidental Petroleum Corporation. Anadarko also led a liquefied natural gas project in Mozambique, but was replaced by Total after the French oil major agreed to buy Anadarko's African assets for $8.8 billion as part of the Occidental's takeover. More you can find on Reuters. It's been a good news week for Mozambique. This piece of news we found on Bloomberg. According to Mozambique's government, ExxonMobil Corp will sign off on an initial investment decision for the biggest ever LNG project in Africa. A ceremony marking the decision will take place on October 8 in Maputo. Exxon's project in northern Cabo Delgado province will cost between $27 billion and $33 billion. The Federal Energy Regulation Commission has given Kinder Morgan's Elba Island LNG facility approval to begin commercial operations on its Train 1. That makes Elba Island the sixth U.S. LNG facility to begin commercial operations. When complete, the facility eventually will include 10 modular trains or units and is backed by a 20-year contract with Royal Dutch Shell. This piece of news we found on Callanish Energy. The U.S. Department of Energy announced the issuance of an order to Eagle LNG approving exports of domestically produced LNG from the Eagle-Jacksonville project to be located along the St. Johns River in Jacksonville. The project, ultimately owned by Ferrous Natural Gas Fuels, plans to export small-scale quantities of LNG, as well as serve the domestic market and provide LNG as shipping fuel. More you can read on energy.gov. German LNG terminal GmbH, the joint venture behind the LNG terminal project in Brunsbüttel in northern Germany, has completed the engineering, procurement, and construction contractor pre-qualification process that began in June this year. Following a careful selection process, 4 internationally operated EPC contractors have been shortlisted to continue the competitive tender process. More about this project you can find on gasworld.com. Asia's largest LNG bunkering vessel has reached its first milestone with the strike seal ceremony held at the Sembcorp Marine Shipyard. The first milestone has been reached after a month of engineering design work since the final investment decision has been taken on the long-term charter contract to operate the vessel has been signed with Japan's Mitsui O.S.K. Lines. This piece of news we found on LNG World News. Pitpoint has opened its first Belgian LNG refueling station for trucks. The station is located in Rechem, which is near the French border. According to Pitpoint, the location of this station represents a significant step towards realizing an international LNG network in northwest Europe, as it has a favorable location for transport movements along the Benelux thoroughfare, which is good news for transporters that have already switched to LNG-fueled vehicles. More you can read on LNG industry. U.S. sanctions on 2 units of Chinese shipper COSCO hit the LNG tanker industry on Monday, as U.S.-listed TK LNG shipping joint venture in Russia has been blocked because of its ties to COSCO. The United States imposed sanctions on COSCO shipping tankers for allegedly carrying Iranian crude oil. According to TK LNG, its 50/50 Yamal LNG joint venture had been deemed a blocked person under the sanctions because its partner China LNG Shipping is 50% owned by COSCO Dalian. More about it you can read on Hellenic Shipping News. Petronas has chartered an LNG bunkering vessel in Malaysia under a deal with Avenir LNG. The time charter party has been struck with Petronas LNG for 7,500 cubic meter LNG carrier. This will provide bunkering services for LNG-fueled vessels around Malaysia, in addition to servicing small-scale terminals. Avenir and Misk Berhad will form a joint venture to handle the commercial operations of the vessel. Ship management will be carried out by a wholly owned subsidiary of Misk, Eagle Star Ship Management. This piece of news we found on energyvoice.com. And last but not least, on Finance Yahoo, Centrica has begun buying LNG from U.S. producer Cheniere under a long-term contract. The first cargo was loaded on LNG tanker Gaslog Skagen and is heading to Europe. Under their 20-year contract, Centrica will buy around 1.75 million tons of LNG per year from Train 5 of Cheniere's Sabine Pass production facility. That's it for this week. Tune in next week for more news, and until then, thanks for tuning in.